We're here with America, Dewey, Gerry.
Hi, Tim.
Welcome back to Australia.
Thank you.
Now, you've just released your first album in almost a decade, not counting Holiday Harmony.
The Christmas one.
The Christmas
yes, that's
one.
right.
You almost
done your
you
homework.
Forgot about
yeah,
that.
I went, wait a minute, hold on. Yeah, that's right.
But what made you actually just pick up the instruments again and release an album?
Well, I have a studio at the house, and we continue to work and write just kind of in the gaps. We have such a busy touring schedule that it's a little bit difficult. But if the writing continues to go on, what really makes it an album or not is whether or not there's some kind of business involved with it, whether a contract comes into focus or something. And I was talking with Adam Schlesinger, who became a friend, one of the eventual producers on this, and we were kind of interneting back and forth, sending songs and writing with together online. And after about a year and a half, he was explaining about he had a partnership with James Iha from the Smashing Pumpkins, and they both co-owned a studio in New York. And so he said, well, why don't you come to New York and we'll cut a couple of things and see how it goes. And when we did those 2 tracks, Sony heard about it and said, this sounds like a good idea, why don't we make an album out of this? So that's when it became more real. It kind of stepped up.
So how did you go, working with Adam Schlesinger and James Iha, and a whole bunch of other people came in, Ryan Adams, God, the list goes on.
They kind of brought those into the fore a little. We had already had a game plan where we've always been singer-songwriters, but we've also been open to doing outside material. So we had this loose plan. We do sort of 4 of Gerry's, 4 of mine, and 4 outside things. And that's when some songs started coming in. The My Morning Jacket song, Golden. We actually had Ryan come in and we wrote a song right in the studio one day. And that one's on the Australian release, sorry. It's not on it's a sort of a bonus cut in the States. But so it's kind of organically happened, to use an overworked term, but just to kind of everything fell into place. But Adam and James and Pete Ganbarg, to give credit where it's due,
A&R.
from the A&R guy, he had some thoughts about material. The song called Always Love, Not a Surf, and the Indian Summer by Maplewood. Anyway, we all agreed it was a meeting of the minds. Once we decided the songs, then we were off to the races, sort of.
And you had all these younger musicians in there.
Yeah.
I imagine Adam Schlesinger. I mean, the first time I heard Fountains of Wayne, I thought, wow, these guys come from America.
Well, that's
not the country band.
That's a compliment. Appreciate it. But we're huge fans. In fact, this is how this all started. Dewey and I were listening to the Fountains of Wayne albums, and we just loved them. In fact, in particular, the Welcome Interstate Managers album with Hackensack and all these great tracks. And I personally thought, I gotta kind of meet this guy, because Adam is the co-writer. He doesn't sing all of that stuff. His partner Chris sings most of it, but Adam is the producer of all of that. So I had a mutual friend, and then I reached out to him, and that's how we got to know him. But somebody there was obviously very into melody and real instruments and things, and you try and stay connected in this business, and we were, of course, just didn't want it to become a touring act and stuff. So these efforts are always going on behind the scenes. Actually, as these other people started to come on board, for example, with Ryan, James Iha was very good friends with Ryan Adams, and Ryan said, I'd love to, be a part of that if possible. It actually kind of swung the other way, where it was never intended to be one of these duets kind of albums, and we really had more offers than we could really accommodate. It was a matter of, if we're going to have people as talented and qualified as that, we wanted to make sure we gave them their due, but they really just wanted to play and be involved in certain ways, and I think that, to the credit of the producers, they really made still a solid America-sounding album. It didn't turn into just a list of guests,
So were you trying to make an album that sounded like America, or was it trying to be an album that brought in things like Ryan Adams' sound and
well, both. I think.
Sound?
I mean, they were really continually bringing up things like Homecoming and Holiday, some of our classic earlier stuff that used that as the target for the sound. But to tell you the truth, when Dew and I go in the studio and we pick up an acoustic guitar, if you use the right mics and and the right processing and stuff, that's how it's going to sound. They just really kept the bar very high in the selection of the songs, in not going overboard in the production. We might tend to set maybe strings, and they kept it just really focused, and I think that's to their credit.
Yeah, I imagine now with all the technology in studios, you could probably just have the America button.
Yeah.
We've never,
make it sound like America.
Yeah, that's true. Even if we wanted to change, or go on a tangent. It never really works out that way. We're always going to sound the way we sound. You know,
Yeah.
we have our vocal blend, and that's sort of what inspired us to begin with in the singer-songwriter thing. Beatles, Beach Boys, whatever, Crosby, Stills and Nash. That's kind of what we do. And even as something as simple as possibly going off into the country world, we couldn't pull off. I remember during some of the albums that weren't doing as well, you know, there was talk of, why don't you move over into the country realm? But you know, that line is blurred now too, to where country is more pop than ever. So
I think the safest thing is just to do what you do and let everybody else figure out what to call it.
Yeah, right. You have changed a little bit over the years. I mean, that's obviously
little.
going to happen just naturally.
yeah, I mean, and if you are inspired by, like when reggae was really at the fore, we'd get a reggae beat or something, or but you know, we didn't kind of go disco or any of those kind
Now
of
that I'd like
full-on
to hear.
genres.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beach Boys did
Satin
a disco
suits.
song, I remember. Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if I want to hear that.
Yeah.
And they did that thing with the Fat Boys. Remember that Wipeout?
Yeah, they did a
Gosh.
rap thing too. Yeah. See, nobody's immune.
How do you guys go writing new songs? I mean, you've got quite a legacy to live up to. Do you think about that at all? Or?
Well, there's certain ingredients that I think make up the America sound, but if you spend too much time, you know, thinking over in that camp of what is it that I'm supposed to sound like, you're really getting off the mark of writing from your heart or your head, you know, of something that's truly emotional. I think the most successful and most real tunes are the ones that just come with the least clutter, the least baggage, as they come out of the heart and straight into the hands, into the instrument or whatever. But having said that, I've lately been thinking a bit about this, and the challenge is, as you age and you add decades to your career, is to try and involve that experience so that you're not just emulating some teenager, you know, the classic Brian Wilson, I'm bugged at my old man, you know. You can write that when you're 18 or 20 or something, but you can't write it when you're 40, 50. So it turns inside out if you use all of this experience and say you're successful at putting that into songs. If by doing that well, all you're doing now is writing a 50-year-old's perspective, you have unfortunately separated yourself from the younger years. So I think the challenge is really to try and keep universal elements. Do you know what I mean? Things that, as you add all of this experience and you can speak about deeper emotions and longer running feelings and things, you don't want to get so out on a limb that you're really just talking to only your peers. And you've lost. So it's kind of like a painter using the primary colors. You know, you can never lose track of those basic elements of, you know, emotion and things. That's how I view it.
Because I was going to ask you, do you see younger people coming to your shows?
Yeah, we've always had fairly broad, you know, span of generations at our shows. Even when we were in our early 20s, there would be older people. A lot of the songs, particularly "I Need You," we've said before, were covered by people like Andy Williams and Johnny Mathis, a generation even before us. So our music has always been fairly approachable, user-friendly, as I like to say. So it crosses lots of generations. Now, as we've gone into our 50s, dare I say, you know, we've got fans who bring their kids, and there's always that cross section, I think, out there. We've never had a very narrow listening audience.
Something that used to happen was if a younger kid came up with an album, they'd inevitably say, "Can you sign this from my dad?" or something. And now, and not just because of the new element of these guys that helped us on this album, but it was starting to happen previous to this. I think a lot of 20-somethings are going back and discovering vinyl and listening to 70s music and stuff. So now that was starting to happen anyway. But in particular, when you put people like Nada Surf and Ryan Adams and Ben Queller, we got a new audience that's coming.
And this generation has got access to so much music. Back in the day, you had to sort of really search out vinyl and put it on this laboriously on this thing and find the track. Now, you know, the click of a mouse, you've got music, and you can put our place in musical history, you know, where it belongs. And I think kids do that a lot. They can, at least if you're as passionate about music as we were when we were younger, you know, we'd be finding how did that link to that, and we can figure out who these guys are. Like when we did. Janet Jackson used elements of the song Ventura Highway in a big hit of hers a few years ago. And, you know, we linked websites and so on. And there was this whole other realm of people that wondered, who, America? What's that? So it's neat that they can do that, and if you're so inclined, you can do the history and find out where we fit into the puzzle, you know.
I imagine probably one of the things that the younger people recognise in you is the George Martin connection.
Yeah.
Because obviously younger people are well and truly into the Beatles and know who they are.
Pick up a few on those, customers who also bought,
Yeah.
George was a great influence on us. He didn't start at the beginning. He started with album number 4, but we did 7 projects with him, and he had a great. First of all, we had a great deal of success. He produced Tin Man and Sister Golden Hair, our second number 1. But we were huge Beatle fans, and really honored to have had the opportunity to work with them.
So let me get this right. So it's like, we don't know who they are, but we know who George is. We know who Ryan Adams is.
Yeah.
We know
Something is clicking.
Fortunately, we've hitched our wagons to the right guys.
Well, it is true. I mean, surely these people are bringing in new audience. Well, like you said, Janet Jackson,
The Janet thing. No, yeah, it's a team effort anyway. In the end, you're not doing it alone. There's always someone. You're either inspired by someone or someone that's adding to your thing. So we've always looked at it that way. It's the sum of the parts kind of thing.
So how if you didn't have these people, do you think you would still be as popular as you are now with the younger people?
Chemistry is good, and the right chemistry. I mean, we've worked with quite a few producers over the years, and sometimes it didn't bring anything.
Yeah, that's true.
You go with the flow, and you give it a shot for a track or 2 or an album maybe. But certainly, there's not a lot of patience for a pairing that doesn't succeed. We worked with Russ Ballard on one track, "You Can Do Magic," and we had a big hit with that song. And so the conventional wisdom was, if a little's good, a lot's better. So the next album we did completely with Russ, but I think that might have been overkill.
Yeah.
So, we certainly produced our own stuff for quite a few years. We did Ventura Highway and Don't Cross the River and a lot of stuff.
And even the 90s albums that didn't see much light of day, Hourglass and Human Nature, which were great projects. For me, at least, I love those. We pretty well produced those ourselves.
So it can be done. It's a lot more work, I can tell you.
It'd be hard to release a new album, and because there is that attitude in a lot of the older and younger crowd of, I like the old stuff better than the new stuff.
Yeah, you're burdened with that. If you've had popularity and big hits and won awards, that's kind of what the focus is. Unfortunately, that's the baggage you've got. So nobody's really that. In our live show, it's that same way. We couldn't get away without playing the greatest hits, if you will. And then it's our job to dance around those big monumental songs and still be able to put interesting new things in and still make the show, flow and have some cohesion. But hopefully we're bringing some new stuff to them too, and they know that we're not just wind-up dolls doing Sister and Horse, which we love, by the way.
This album has been accepted in that way. In fact, a lot of the reviews have said, best thing since Hearts, and which is nice to read. It means, first of all, they listen to it, which is good.
Yeah,
that's a good start.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, even that's hard. Nowadays people listen to 1 song, 2 songs, and so we're grateful people give it the time. But again, more power to James and Adam, because that was really the focus. It wasn't let's get a couple of songs and fill in another 10 tracks. They really wanted to make a good, solid album, and I think they did.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you about the song "Horse with No Name." Now, I'm a bit paranoid about asking this because I don't want you to get offended or anything, but a lot of people do think that song is a Neil Young song.
Yeah, no, that's not offensive. That right away, that was the thing. And ironically, it knocked Neil off the number 1 spot. I mean, that was the whole hubbub of the day. And yeah, we were certainly inspired by him. I wrote that song, and I'm sure he was right on the tip of my tongue at that time. I mean, Neil music, we were absorbing, everything he put out. So yeah, I don't shy away from that influence. But having said that, we went on. That was our debut song, and that's what started it. But then we had to follow it, and over the course of the decades, I think we're still around. It shows there was something there. And also, we've always said, we all protect our heroes, and they had such a huge following. Neil had come out of the Buffalo Springfield and into the CSM projects and his solo albums, so he had quite a strong following. And we were these new brash kids, and so I think there was a backlash by writers and fans protecting their own hero. Neil didn't mind. We ended up being in the same office with Neil and Crosby and Stills and Joni Mitchell and everybody, the David Geffen, Elliot Roberts management firm, Lookout Management. So we were all under the same roof, and there was never any animosity. And we've since worked with Stephen and Graham and run into him all the time. Neil's a little harder to get next to because he's just that way. He's a shy guy, I guess, or at least a private guy.
Yeah.
But he's always been friendly to me. I get no horse with no name smacks.
Well, there you go. Well, guys, thanks a lot for
Thanks,
coming in.
Tim.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.